Good morning, class. Today we're going to learn about how to make a good radiograph. What is a radiograph? A radiograph is an x-ray of a body part that goes on a film. Sort of looks like a picture. What we will use as an example is a picture of a apple. That you know how you just get a coloring book picture and you color it? Okay, well we're going to get a picture of an apple that we're going to color in class today as a way to explain to you how to make a good radiograph. Even though radiographs are what we use to x-ray body parts for the doctors and they tell us what's wrong with our body or if we've broken a bone or something like that. And a blank color of an apple has actual color to it, and a radiograph usually is black and white or gray and white or something like that. But maybe the picture of the apple will give you a good idea of what I'm trying to teach you. Okay, something else we'll learn about today is contrast. In contrast, I would say is how clear a picture is, or how light the white or the lightness on a picture. If we color this picture of the apple and the apple looks sort of foggy or cloudy sometimes, as we may say, you know, when you go outside and it looks like it's real smoky outside or ashy. Maybe if you go outside after a long, hot rainstorm on a hot summer's day and it's fog all around, and things don't look quite as clear as they normally would on a bright sunny day, this is what contrast looks like sort of on a radiograph. Another thing we'll learn about today is density. Density is all the darkness on the radiograph. They tend to say the blackness, but we're not going to say the blackness on a radiograph. We're going to say the darkness on a radiograph. And what I mean by that is any rich color, or if something looks dark, instead of looking faded, you know how you have a pair of jeans and they're brand new and they look really dark and have a lot of color to them? Well, that's something to give you a sort of an idea of what density looks like on a radiograph. Okay, another thing we'll learn about today is resolution. Resolution is what we're going to call the detail. Like, for example, if you look at a person's blouse and the blouse looks sort of wrinkled, or if the blouse has little small specks of dirt or a different color in it, well, if you can see those little small fine things about a person's blouse, then that will be considered your detail, or in other words, what we're going to learn today, your resolution. Now, what we're going to also learn about today is something that we call distortion. Distortion is something that, let's say, for example, if you have an apple or a picture of an apple, and you look at that picture and that picture looks a certain way. Well, then let's imagine if you take an magnifying glass. You know, you take a magnifying glass sometimes and look at an ant, and the ant looks bigger, or it looks like it's shaped a little bit different than if you just looked at it with your naked eye instead of with the magnifying glass. Well, this will probably represent what we call distortion. And distortion could be something that makes a picture or an object look smaller or larger, most of the time larger than it actually is, or if it makes it look longer, where it's actually not that long, it's a little bit shorter in actual life if you're looking at it with your naked eye. That'll give you an idea of what distortion is. Okay, for the first thing we're going to look at is, let's say we take this picture right here of this apple. And you see how that apple looks sort of plain or dull. It doesn't look really red. It looks sort of kind of red. Well, that is an idea of a picture or a radiograph having too much contrast, or it's too much contrast on the film where it doesn't look really, really clear. Okay, now let's look at this picture. Now this picture looks a whole lot different, a whole lot better, could we say? Would you all agree? I would too. That this picture looks a whole lot more red than this picture. They're both apples, but the difference in the pictures is this picture has a lot more contrast, which has a little ash to it, or not rich color, or not real deep color. And this picture looks really, really red. That's the difference in contrast and density. Okay, now resolution. Resolution, we're gonna say, to fix our resolution, what we're gonna do is take a crayon, and when we start coloring our picture, We're going to take our crayon and we're going to press just a little bit, not very hard, just lightly color the picture. Then you can't see all the little fine details, the little small details about a picture. That's going to be called our resolution. And maybe our resolution is not what we want it to be if it doesn't look quite as sharp, or we can't see the little fine markings or something like that on the picture. That's going to be a bad thing with our resolution. Okay, now if you want to see something in an app in your picture that shows good detail, a lot of people tend to bring it closer. Now, what thing did we talk about today that if you bring it a whole lot closer to your eye and look at it, if you take it way back further from your eye, what could that do to your picture? Right. It could make your picture look a little smaller if you bring it closer. But when you're doing radiograph or x-rays, it does, if you bring it closer, that usually makes it look a whole lot bigger. Which sometimes people think that if they bring a picture closer to their eyes, it looks better, or it sort of looks smaller and they can see it better. Well, that's not necessarily the case. If you bring it closer or further away, that determines whether your distortion is going to be affected. And what did we say distortion was? Right, something that doesn't accurately or correctly show you the right size or shape of an object that you're looking at. In this case, it'd be our x-ray or our radiograph. Okay, now, with all that we've discussed today, what would you say would be the best way to take a picture and have it actually represent what you're trying to show? That's right. We should have a picture that shows an accurate or correct size, an accurate or correct shape, the right color or the right amount of color, which in the case of a radiograph, it won't actually be color. The colors we'll be talking about is black, white, or gray. And what we want is a lot of darkness to balance out with our lightness to show basically what we're trying to show. And when you have enough darkness to your pictures, that usually shows if you have any kind of disease or any kind of, if you have a break in your bone, the bone will look white and then it'll have a dark mark across it to where you can see where the bone was broken. And you know, that probably is very painful. So you want to get that the doctor to be able to see all those things so he can fix it. If he can't visualize it or can't see it really well on your radiograph, then he may not realize that your leg is broken, and you may be trying to walk around and leave at the doctor's office and think that everything's okay, and you're constantly in pain, you're constantly hurting because the doctor wasn't accurately able to tell you that it was broken. Okay, now with all of that said, let's have another question. If you take a blank picture of an apple and you color it, which one do you think would be a better way of showing that apple? With just a little bit of color to it, a lot of color? That's right, it would be a lot of color. And what was the word I told you all would represent color? Density. Density is one of our main things we want to accomplish when we're doing a radiograph. We want to be able to see density as well as our contrast, but we also want to keep in mind our resolution. Okay? Now we're going to get to the fun part. And the fun part is we're going to pass out these pictures of these apples to each one of you. All of you will get crayons, and I want you to color your picture. The full front row, I want you to focus on your contrast. And what we're going to do today, you notice I gave you a red crayon, a white crayon, and your green to color your leaf on top of your apple, and so on and so forth. Well, what we're going to do as a trick to show our contrast is once we lightly color the picture with our red, to make the color very light red, we're going to go back over it with our white just a little bit. That's going to represent your fog, what we're going to call our fog today. And what that does is makes it sort of look faded. Okay? Now once you've done that, you can look at that picture and you can see that doesn't look like a really good